Welcome! Welcome! The show's just begun. There's so much to be done. You want to be here to stay. It's a one-of-a-kind fantasy workshop where you'll quite simply be amazed.
Okay, that's enough. Secret of the Mimic is out, and people are loving it. From the visuals and animations, to the sound design and diegetic user interface, unfortunately long list of positives in the game. But I am here to do something a little more unique. I want to talk about what's there to not love as much. The game may be a massive improvement over Security Breach, but it's very unreasonable to compare Secret of the Mimic with the game where quality is merely an Easter egg. So time to set the comparison aside, and point at where this game could improve. Secret of the Mimic is built around a very promising concept. The Mimic can wear any suit in the environment, replicating their personality and character, which keeps you guessing who is going to move next. That sounds too good to be true, and it is. You see the Mimic doing this job only in the narrative. The first problem with the execution is how obvious it is when you are in danger. If a room is without suits, then you're safe. If not, then you know one of them is going to move very soon. The tension is spoiled even further by playing a sound effect when he enters a suit. The suits that the Mimic wears is seemingly chosen randomly, which can be problematic at times. The game fails to sell the idea of the Mimic imitating different characters, because deep down, the Mimic is the same AI in a different skin each time. There is no difference between the suits, no unique behavior or personality, nothing to make the suits that he wears make any difference. The mini-bosses are the only exceptions, who you mostly spend time with in the scripted sequences and not the stealth. Even ignoring the lack of variety, the AI is very basic. It never adapts to your strategies and is predictable, which means that you never feel a rise in difficulty because you can use the same tricks endlessly. Now for dealing with this Mimic, you have three mechanics: wind-up toys, environmental objects, and of course, lockers. The distraction mechanics may be serviceable, but I can't say the same thing about lockers. You're perfectly safe in a locker unless you were seen entering them, which isn't a common occurrence thanks to its line of sight breaking often. You can stay in them for as long as you want and nothing happens. I genuinely believe that the game could be much better without them, and instead you had to hide behind objects in the environment that do not guarantee your safety. The final problem is the absence of a picking method, which adds unnecessary risk and encourages playing it safe. Because in order to check an area, you have to stick your face out and pray the Mimic isn't looking at you. And that is the stealth, which heavily falls flat by underutilizing an otherwise amazing concept. But how can it be improved? First thing to take care of is the predictability of when you're in danger. Remove the audio cue of the Mimic entering a suit, so that the player is more aware of their environment. And also try to blur the line between safe and unsafe areas, in order to keep the player guessing whether they are actually safe. Add traits and abilities to the suits. Doing this makes the Mimic actually, well, mimic. And also makes the player adapt their strategies for each suit. And also try to be more careful with where it spawns. Please. Make the AI adaptive too, something that changes its behavior based on the player's repeated strategies. And add drawbacks to the mechanics. The only ones with the drawback currently are the chains, but the wind-up toys are infinite, and you can stay in the same lockers forever. What if the Mimic started to check lockers that you've used too many times? What if using the wind-up toys too frequently makes it immune to them temporarily? Lastly, add more picking methods. There should be a way for the player to scan their environment without taking blind risks. That wraps up the stealth portion, which is only 1/3 of the game. This is thanks to the game being fulfilled with scripted sequences and what we're diving into next. Puzzles in horror games are very common. They neutralize the game's pacing and let the player take a break from the horror segment. In Secret of the Mimic, you take a break from the puzzles instead. Now these are packed with an amazing presentation. But it seems like that's where all the effort went, and the puzzles themselves are just meaningless busywork. Normally, when you're told to find the schematics of something, you follow a straight path that takes you to exactly what you're looking for. But here, you're fixing elevators, playing aim training sessions, wearing spring lock suits, fixing bridges, shooting targets for an automated show for 7 minutes. You're doing every obscure thing imaginable just to reach an upgraded station. Maybe it's not so bad to be a Fazbear Entertainment employee after all. Half the time you're having fun playing minigames that have nothing to do with your actual task because the game needs more runtime. But let's say we have an outstanding excuse and lore explanation for every one of these minigames. Are they even fun to play? Well, sometimes they are. The great amount of effort on the animations and sound design may carry some of them, but there is a limit to how cute you can be. The presentation may be amazing as seen right off the bat in the introduction show, but it starts to become the entire game. Various shows, over-the-top sequences, and the building collapsing every hour. Spectacle is a very common occurrence in this Fazbear universe, and what it does is desensitize you to all of it. The next time you see a sequence like this, you feel indifference because the puzzles have more animations than gameplay anyway. And that is where some of these sequences start to be agonizing. Very, very agonizing. From the slow animations, to the sometimes buggy controls, to the puzzle itself being boring in the first place, you just wish you could skip some of them. It really makes you wonder why we don't just pick a sledgehammer and brick every wall until we reach the upgraded stations. Damaging Fazbear Entertainment's property? The whole place is collapsing anyway. Arnold is too tired for breaking walls? Well, this seemingly tired Arnold runs quite well for 6 hours, even after falling down several times. Big Top got crushed after falling from height, and then Arnold regains consciousness like he just woke up from a good sleep. But let's slow down for a minute. How do we work on this? More important than anything else is cutting the filler. Some of them are a genuine waste of time and not fun. The puzzles should also be shorter and have faster animations. I spent a longer time watching animations than doing anything else in many instances. Add a thread to some of them too. I know the puzzles are for the sake of having no threads, but if they take up such a big portion of the game, then having an enemy in a few of them could remind the player that they're playing a horror game. And that's the puzzles for you. You might think that I hate the puzzles in this game a lot, but that honor goes to... On paper, scripted sequences don't sound so bad, but they're a lot trickier to implement while keeping them feel organic. This game failed to do that. Let's start with the chases. They are extremely linear, predictable, and rigid, where you just run forward without any decision making. A single mistake in them gets you killed, and then you replay the same events with the same order and timing. In some cases, you might die because of the path not being very clear the first time, or the next lever to pull being out of your line of sight for some fucking reason. They are fulfilled with great animations and nice tracks to give them credit, but if everything is a dramatic moment, with all the explosions, collapses, and fake close calls, then nothing feels dramatic in the end. Speaking of fake close calls, look how far Dolly is. Somehow after you enter the vents, she's only 2 meters away from you. This happens way more than once, another example of it featuring the mimic. And how am I supposed to feel threatened by any of these events that I know are going to end in my favor inevitably? These chases feel more like cutscenes. Jackie's arms never catch you, and Big Top never crushes you while slamming the floor and decorating your pathway with mannequins. Even they know they're just actors. And that's exactly what makes them so uninteresting. There is no actual tension or challenge, it's all just visual noise. It's the same story out of the chases too, like in this stealth sequence with Dolly. Crouch while moving and nothing happens to you. If you don't, the game forcefully alerts Dolly. Like the puzzles, these moments wouldn't be so problematic if there weren't so many of them. It's nice to add a few to have variety, but having this many starts to get tiring. With all that said though, these aren't unfixable. Of course, there should be less scripted stuff, and more room for the game to play out organically. The chases should have more interactivity to them so that you build actual tension instead of faking it. Conveniently placed levers do nothing. I know I'm under no danger as long as I just run forward, but what if I had to dodge Jackie's arms? What if I had to play a fast-paced game of hide and seek with Big Top and his lights? If it's about making these mini-bosses memorable, actually witnessing their features in action instead of watching animations would be far more effective. And please, cut this scripted stuff. It's frustrating to go through a section where the game breaks its own rules just for the sake of forcing a very specific playstyle. And that should cover the 3 main aspects of the gameplay. But we're not done yet. After all, this is FNAF. And we cannot talk about a FNAF game without talking about the narrative. I'll be honest, dedicating my life to the 4 disastrous letters of LORE is not my field of study, but I'd like to talk about how the story of Secret of the Mimic is presented and narrated throughout the game. Despite how big of an improvement the story is over Security Breach, the game does it a huge disservice by handling it very inconsistently. First off, I've already gone through how you spend lots of time playing minigames despite supposedly being in constant danger, and how you seem to be more durable than a big metallic base. The story doesn't connect to your actions as much as it could. All the unrelated things that you do make it easy to forget that you're looking for a schematic. The game also refuses to properly answer a lot of the basic questions that a player might ask as soon as they start playing the game. Some of them are supposed to be answered indirectly, I assume, but if I don't understand the very basics and why I am here, I can't feel connected to anything that happens in the game, because it doesn't make enough sense to me. Why do I have to care about what happens to Arnold when I don't even know why this moron doesn't just quit his job instead of continuing his mission, despite nearly dying multiple times in various levels? Oh, you'd rather die than to lose your van? That sure sounds like a FNAF story. Moving on to the dialogue. There is too much of it.
Says the data diver was updated to include creator permissions. Guess you should have gone there first. But hindsight is 20/20, right? With the addition of the aforementioned homicidal tendencies, of course.
Many of the points that could be demonstrated more effectively through the gameplay and visuals are instead only discussed by the dispatch. An example of it is the revelation of the Mimic entering suits and disguising itself as that character, despite the superior alternative being an animation of something barely visible entering a suit. At the same time, Arnold has too little dialogue. Early on, he's introduced as a character who does speak, and every once in a while he says a few words. Yet in many instances where you expect him to just say anything, he's silent. Elsewhere, you uncover Edwin's story through audio logs scattered around the manor, allowing all employees to listen to their private conversations at ease. I don't like how so much of the exposition is through these logs. Without them, you would have no idea Edwin and his family's tragedy had anything to do with what happened here, because the environment feels entirely disconnected from their story. There is hardly anything that hints at the events occurring at or even affecting this location. There isn't even any sort of memorial for Fiona or David. How am I supposed to be convinced that Edwin cared enough about them to make the Mimic when I see no trace of it in the entire manor? What I'm talking about is something that the game already does to an extent, which is environmental storytelling. The huge size of the manor and machineries hinting at the success and innovations of the MCM, the employee corpses hinting at previous accidents, this, and that. You can see that the game uses this technique to explain certain things, but why was it not used more extensively in order to immerse the player in the main parts of the story further? It could make the environment feel more grounded and add more weight to the story, as we would be able to see the impact of Edwin's tragedy on his company and employees, which are replaced with just audio logs and paragraphs of text, also known as mails. These mails are supposed to show how everyone else has been reacting to everything that happened as the MCM. These are supposed to be optional collectibles, I think. There is a noticeable inconsistency in how important these mails are to understanding the story. While some are very obscure and unimportant, like the spelling of the word mycelium, some are very important, like William Afton talking about his deal. And because of that, the players feel obliged to collect all the mails in order to make sure they have all the important ones, because otherwise the story would not make as much sense. And that once again brings us back to how the game underutilizes environmental storytelling and instead takes the cheaper route of putting mails and audio logs for you. You talk about employees stealing blueprints, for example, but why don't you show that by having a vandalized room with the drawers and lockers left open, papers scattered around, and posters warning employees about stolen works? Considering how they spent so much time and resources on the game's visuals and narrative, it actually baffles me how little of the narrative is conveyed through the manor. But overall, the story is certainly a big improvement. It just has a long way to go when it comes to having a consistent narration. In one way, the game wants to be more straightforward with the story, but it also wants to keep lots of things subtle or locked behind secrets, and it's not very good at separating the optional from the essential. The more issues, the merrier. You might have seen how much is kept behind secret areas or doors that require backtracking and puzzle solving as you play the game. While this can reward the curious fans very well, it can make many players feel forced to go out of their way and find them against their own will. It becomes less of an exploration reward and more of an obligation. This game is already very short for the hefty $40 price tag, so the last thing the players want to do is miss out on lots of secret rooms, stealth sequences, puzzles, moon.exe, and another ending. While Moon.exe is a creative, albeit egregiously slow-paced way to reward exploration, it is a waste of time to play until you have all 25 collectibles. The minigame is there for you to play if you want, but unless you have everything, you're up to no conclusion and you're leaving the minigame with disappointment until New Game Plus. Speaking of which, it's outrageous how you are forced to play the entire game from scratch in order to guess the secret ending. Imagine going through the game in your first run, finding all collectibles and secret areas, but one collectible remains and you can't guess the secret ending. Now you have to replay the entire game just because of this Tiger Rock collectible that spawned only in the New Game Plus mode. And for someone like me who didn't enjoy the game all that much, the second run was even less fun to go through, especially when it's stripped of all surprises. They should have locked Moon.exe behind the New Game Plus if they decided to take this route. Not only would the player not waste their time with a minigame that cannot be finished in their first run, but you also get to provide more in New Game Plus than just a plushie. I'm adding this part after finishing New Game Plus. Until now I avoided blaming Steelwool directly, since a lot of these mistakes are simply a matter of inexperience. But this one is pure laziness. I played every secret area like the Moon sequence and gathered every collectible. Then I tried to play Moon.exe, but one collectible was still missing. Where is it? It turns out that there is one in the house level. Sounds fine, but there is a catch. There is no computer in there to play Moon.exe. So I looked it up, and there is a computer right after the house level. Cool. But now, just because I didn't gather this single collectible in my first run, I had to go through the film reel puzzle again, unlike everyone else. So I did it. Finally upstairs playing Moon.exe, finished it, got the access level, then went downstairs for the next fetch quest. The door is locked. I couldn't return to the house, it didn't let me, no matter what I tried. What's next? I thought maybe I can go through the parachute ending again, hoping that the game brings me back to the security office in order to replay the ending. So I sat through the whole credits. My laptop is screaming and begging every god in the world to end the credits before it melts. And I'm thinking to myself that things couldn't possibly get worse. I don't believe it. I refuse to believe that nobody at Steelwool, including both the internal and external QA departments, asked themselves, what if the player doesn't get this vacuum in their first run? I wasted my entire time playing New Game Plus in order to get the secret ending for the video, and in the end I got everything but the fucking ending. The fans are probably connecting the dots trying to figure out whether there is lore explanation to this. Maybe Depraved knew something that the FNAF universe was not ready for, and he had to be stopped from putting the mimic to sleep. Maybe it was David in my mind telling me to not play New Game Plus and just use someone else's footage. It's not worth the agony. But I didn't listen to him, and I paid the price. And some people are going to say that it's my fault for not getting that collectible in my first run, because I could just magically know that this would happen. But you would be right that part of it is my fault. Playing this game expecting Steelwool to playtest their shit. I apologize for this suddenly harsh tone of mine, but this is not lack of experience. It's an inexcusable lack of care. The autosaving can be annoying when it comes to collectibles and mails, because they are not stored until the next checkpoint. This has led to many instances of people losing mails and collectibles, forcing them to collect them again and pray that they reach a checkpoint. The worst offender is the admin wing. So many mails that you lose every single time you die and you have to keep recollecting them. Here is a better solution to finding the code for the collectible. Google it. Fuck the mails. And then after you gather the collectible, you still have no checkpoint, and then die because you run into one of the cupcakes in order to trigger the alarm, only to realize that the cupcakes can kill you for some reason. Genius! They had the opportunity to shake things up with a new strategy for the player, where they turn the cupcakes into tools that lure Chica. But then they do this. Getting carried away now. Something they could do in order to address the saving issue is saving the collectibles separately. So even when the player goes all the way back to the start of the level, at least the collectibles are saved. Moving on, the audio playback doesn't work very well. Besides a few bugs here and there that are unlikely to affect your playthrough for the most part, it's sometimes really hard to determine the direction of the audio cues and their distance. The game also confuses you with the footsteps being loud as if they're right next to you, but they're actually on another floor. Lastly, accessibility settings. The color blindness filter setting doesn't help, because it doesn't fix the fact that some puzzles rely on color to begin with, like this one in the house level. But the game also lacks settings for people with motor and auditory disabilities. There is no setting for simplifying the complex moves required for the controls, and no setting that adds visual indicators for the audio cues. Lack of these settings is not an issue exclusive to this game or Steelwool, but it never hurts to encourage adding these in order to make more players able to play. And we're done. That is my critique of Secret of the Mimic. I know, that was a lot that I didn't like, but this game is hours long. There is a lot that I like about the game too. I just don't want to waste your time talking about the stuff you know and like already. But there are also other negatives that I haven't covered, which are more specific to the levels, and I can't be bothered to dissect every single one of them here. This video only focuses on the bigger picture. I mainly discuss the bigger issues that infects the entire game, such as the inconsistent pacing, the over-reliance on scripted sequences, excessive handholding, bland stealth, and the sheer lack of distinctive gameplay. So if an overview of the bigger problems of this game was all you needed, then you're welcome. But now, I want to finish this video with a few words about Steelwool. I'm sure you are no stranger to the rocky journey of FNAF and Steelwool. I spent this whole time shedding light on many of the problems that most people have overlooked on YouTube, but don't let that rub you the wrong way. This video is not supposed to tear the game down, quite the opposite. Like every other video that I've made on FNAF and its fan games, my goal is to show where there is room for improvement. I believe people massively praising this game is the result of how Security Breach sets the bar so low for FNAF that this game's improvements came off as very drastic. When you compare the two, it's hard to believe that they are made by the same studio. That's what I want to comment Steelwool for. As much as I think this game is far from great, the leap in quality is undeniable. But at the same time, I can't help but feel a little concerned. You see, people are raving about this game unlike Security Breach. Fazenom, for example, who was losing his mind over Security Breach, and rightfully so, really enjoyed this game, and I'm glad he did. What I fear though is that the generally positive reception so far is enough for Steelwool to slow down with their improvements and not continue the effort. I would be more than glad to be proven wrong, but until their next game, I'm afraid nothing guarantees that. I truly believe that if they continue to put the same amount of effort on improving their next games, then eventually we will finally have that great free-roam FNAF game. But until then, you and I can only contribute to the franchise by sharing proper feedback. Maybe you love the game and good for you, but you can't say the same for everyone. I am helping neither myself as the player nor Steelwool as the developer by pretending that I love the game and attributing every criticism towards the game to nostalgia like a fucking idiot. And to whoever that is in the comments giving lore explanation to everything I criticized, just because something makes sense doesn't mean it's fun. If I didn't like something, then the narrative context is no help. Steelwool is making these games for you to enjoy, so they need your genuine inputs in order to figure out how they can make them the best they can be. Secret of the Mimic is by no means terrible, but FNAF still has a really long way to go in order to adapt to this new gameplay structure. And when is that transition going to end? I don't know. Nobody knows. And maybe that is the secret of the Mimic. Thanks for watching. It even removed the plus icon. Why?